chosen ones, you signed these 3 shadow contracts before you even awakened. You think awakening begins with light. You think the moment you wake up is the moment everything changes. But the truth is far more chilling. You didn't start this journey when you awakened. You started it long before, in silence, in spaces your conscious mind can't remember. And in those forgotten spaces you made agreements, not with demons, not with destiny in the way you've been told. You made deals with your own soul, silent contracts written in energy, stamped by choices you didn't know you were making. And those contracts have been shaping every heartbreak, every struggle, every storm you've survived until now. Does that sound insane? Maybe. But ask yourself this: why does life feel like it has a script? Why do patterns keep repeating? Pain disguised in different faces, betrayals dressed in new names, cycles that drag you back even when you swear you've broken free. That's not chaos. That's a contract at work. And before you awakened, you signed 3 of them. Without ink, without paper, without memory. But their signatures run through your blood, through your very energy field. And if you don't face them now, you'll keep mistaking your destiny for bad luck.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first contract is the contract of isolation. You didn't sign it because you hate people. You signed it because your soul understood something your mind still resists. You cannot awaken in the noise. You cannot rise while drowning in other people's illusions. Every chosen one agrees to this before the veil even drops. That's why loneliness stalked you long before your awakening. That's why people drifted away when you needed them most. Lovers vanished, friends betrayed, family grew distant. You thought life was punishing you. It wasn't. It was keeping the promise you made. You asked for truth, and truth requires silence. Silence that rips away the comfort of the crowd. Silence that forces you to hear your own voice when every distraction is gone. And that silence feels like death because, in a way, it is. The death of the old you. But let's be real, isolation hurts. You scroll through your phone, wishing someone understood. You watch them laugh together while you fight battles no one sees. And some nights, the emptiness feels like it's eating you alive. You think, why me? Why am I always the outsider? Here's the answer: because the crowd can't walk where you're going. Their comfort zones would suffocate your calling. You ask to awaken, and this is the price. Still want to blame life for being unfair? Or can you own that you agreed to this even if you didn't remember? Now let me hit you with something that will make your soul shiver. If you feel alone right now, if you've been cut off from people you thought would stay forever, your first contract is active, and you can fight it all you want. Cling to toxic friendships, chase validation, drown yourself in noise, but every time you do, the universe will strip it away again. Why? Because you can't drag dead weight into the dimension you're headed for. The second contract is darker. It's the contract of fire. You agreed that your transformation would not be gentle. Why? Because the destiny you signed up for requires a depth most humans will never touch. And depth is forged in fire. That's why your life has burned again and again. Jobs collapsing, relationships ending, dreams turning to dust just when you thought they were solid. You cry, why does everything fall apart when I start to feel safe? Here's the answer: because safety was never your teacher. Destruction was. Comfort does not carve gods, fire does. And before you awakened, you said, "Let me burn until only truth remains." That vow became law. So now every time you cling to something false, the fire comes. It doesn't hate you, it saves you. It scorches what your soul outgrew, but your ego refuses to release. And yes, it feels cruel. Yes, it feels endless. But if you could see the self that's being sculpted in those flames, you'd stop calling it suffering and start calling it alchemy. The question is, how many times will you run back into burning houses before you realize you asked for this purification? And then there's the third contract, the most hidden, the most terrifying. I'll warn you now, when you face this one, it will shake you to your core because it demands the ultimate surrender. It's the contract of silence before power. You agreed that before the crown rests on your head, the world will strip you bare of recognition. It will let others misunderstand you, mock you, even forget you. It will let your name sink into obscurity while people you know rise on lies and shortcuts, and you will scream, "Why them and not me? Why is my light buried while theirs shines?" And the universe will whisper, "Because you asked to be unshakable." You can't lead what you still need. You can't hold divine power if you're addicted to applause. So the silence comes first. The obscurity comes first, until the day you no longer need the crown to know you're royal. Sit with that. Feel it. Because this is the contract that will break the shallowest parts of you. But if you endure it, if you let the silence teach you what noise never could, you will rise with a power that cannot be bought, faked, or stolen. Now ask yourself, how much of this already sounds like your life? The loneliness, the endless endings, the obscurity that gnaws at your pride. You thought these were curses. They're not, they're signatures. And in the next part, I'm going to rip the veil off and show you how these contracts operate in the shadows of your daily life, and how to stop being a slave to them and start mastering them. Because let me promise you this, what you agreed to cannot be erased, but it can be rewritten. The pen is still in your hand, if you're brave enough to use it. How the shadow contracts control your life and how to turn them into power. The moment you agreed to these contracts, long before your conscious mind woke up, they began weaving themselves into the very fabric of your reality. You've felt it, haven't you? The sense that something invisible is pulling strings behind the scenes. The patterns you can't escape. The doors that slam just when you reach for them. The people who enter your life like answers and leave like questions. None of it is random. These contracts aren't words on paper. They are living codes embedded in your energy field, silently dictating who you meet, what you lose, and how you rise. And until you decode them, you will keep mistaking fate for failure. Let's start with the first one, the contract of isolation. Do you know why you can't seem to fit in no matter how hard you try? Why crowds exhaust you? Why shallow conversations feel like swallowing poison? Why you always feel like an alien in rooms full of smiling faces? This isn't just social anxiety, it's design. The contract demands your detachment because attachment breeds noise. And noise kills clarity. That's why every time you try to cling to the wrong people, life rips them away like roots torn from soil. That betrayal you're still replaying in your head, that friend who ghosted you without explanation, that lover who promised forever and then vanished. Stop calling it rejection, it was enforcement. You asked for a truth so raw that illusions couldn't stay, and if you're honest, weren't those connections secretly dimming your fire? Didn't you feel yourself shrinking to keep them comfortable? The universe saw it. The contract activated, and you were left standing alone, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because the throne you're headed for cannot be shared with those who fear their own power. Then comes the contract of fire. This one is brutal because it hides in plain sight. Every collapse, every heartbreak, every storm that felt like it would swallow you alive, that was the fire doing its work. And it never asks permission. Why? Because you already gave it consent when you said, "Strip me of everything false." Do you remember that night you whispered, "I just want to be free"? Freedom has a price. And that price is the burning of every cage you thought was shelter. That job you thought was security, it burned. That relationship you swore was love, it burned. And you begged, "Why me? Why now?" But the fire doesn't speak in answers, it speaks in ashes. Because ashes are proof that something untrue died, so something indestructible could be born. But here's the twist. Most people never rise from those ashes. They cling to the rabble of their old life, mistaking ruins for roots. They rebuild the same cage in a different color and call it healing. But not you. You can't go back. That's why even when you try to force old habits, they taste like dust. That's the contract doing its work. And the question you need to ask now is this: how many more times will you fight the fire when you could learn to dance in it? Because here's the secret: fire is not your enemy. Fire is your forge. Every time something ends, you're not being erased, you're being edited by the highest author in existence, your own soul. And then there's the contract of silence before power, the most dangerous and the most divine. This one doesn't just hurt your heart, it hurts your pride. It forces you into invisibility while others shine with borrowed light. You watch people who cheat rise faster than you. You see shallow voices get the recognition you've bled for. And you think, what's the point? Why does no one see me? Here's the truth that will sting and heal all at once. Obscurity is not abandonment. It's insulation. You're being hidden because your foundation isn't finished. If you rose too soon, your own power would crush you. This silence isn't punishment, it's calibration. The universe is stretching your roots in the dark so your crown won't snap in the storm. But can you hold the silence without losing your song? Can you keep building when no one claps? That's the question. Because if you can, when your season comes, it will be so sudden the world will think you appeared overnight. They'll call it luck, you'll call it law. Now, let me pull the thread tighter. These contracts don't just influence events, they rewire your psychology. They train you to detach when you crave clinging. They strip you until you find worth without titles. They starve you of validation until you no longer need it. That's why the pain feels personal. It's chiseling your identity like marble, carving away everything small so the masterpiece can breathe. But here's the choice. You can fight the sculptor and live as a block of stone, or you can surrender and rise as a statue that time itself cannot erode. Which will it be? And here's the part that flips everything. These contracts aren't chains. They're keys if you can stop resisting them. If you can align with what they're trying to teach, you will unlock a level of power no one can take from you. Because the one who masters isolation becomes unshakable. The one who dances in fire becomes unstoppable. The one who thrives in silence becomes undeniable. This is what they never tell you. The suffering you curse today is the strategy that crowns you tomorrow. In the next part, I'm going to take you even deeper into the hidden clauses of these contracts, the unspoken terms that keep you repeating cycles, and the sacred hacks to rewrite them without breaking your destiny. This isn't just about surviving the shadow anymore, it's about weaponizing it, because when you do, the very forces that tried to break you will become the bricks you build your empire with. The hidden clauses, and how to rewrite your shadow contracts without breaking the cosmic law. You thought the contracts were simple: isolation, fire, silence. But here's the twist that hits like a blade. These contracts have clauses, hidden fine print your conscious mind never read. These clauses are why, even after awakening, you keep circling back to pain. Why you swear, "I've learned my lesson," only to find yourself in the same hell dressed in a different disguise. The universe isn't cruel, it's precise, and until you decode these clauses, the cycle repeats, not because you're cursed, but because you're calibrated for growth. The first hidden clause is buried inside the contract of isolation. It whispers, "You will attract what you most crave to teach you why you don't need it." Read that again. You want connection? You'll meet people who mirror your deepest wounds. You long for love? You'll fall for those who validate your worth only to rip it away. It's not punishment, it's pattern breaking. Because the only way to master solitude is to stop seeing it as a void and start seeing it as a throne. The universe keeps sending you counterfeit intimacy, so you finally say, "Enough. My soul is not a discount store." The moment you stop needing from others what you haven't given yourself, the clause dissolves. Until then, isolation isn't over. It upgrades. The second clause hides inside the contract of fire. You will keep losing what you idolize. Let that sink in. Anything you place above your essence, relationships, money, status, will burn. Not because the universe hates joy, but because dependency is a cage disguised as comfort. You think you're holding that job? That job is holding you. You think you own that relationship? It owns you. And every time you worship something outside yourself, the fire moves in like a silent assassin. Because the promise you made was this: "I will not belong to anything that blinds me from my truth." So when you clutch at the untrue, the flames answer. Brutal? Yes. But liberation rarely feels like luxury. It feels like collapse. The hack? Stop asking the fire, "Why me?" Start asking, "What did I crown that wasn't king?" And the third clause, the most savage, is locked inside the contract of silence before power. Your stage will remain dark until you can sing in the shadows. Translation: you will not be seen until visibility no longer feeds your identity. You can hustle, you can grind, you can post 10 times a day, nothing will hit. Why? Because your motive leaks through your energy, and energy doesn't lie. You can't fake sovereignty. If applause is your oxygen, obscurity will choke you until you learn to breathe without it. That's why some of you feel like ghosts, alive but invisible. The silence isn't punishment, it's a detox. It's purging the addiction to external validation, so when the crown comes, You wear it without chains. Now, here's the question that splits souls in two. Can these contracts be rewritten? The answer is yes, but not the way you think. You can't rip them up in rage, you can't bypass them with affirmations, you can't manifest your way out while secretly resenting the lessons, because these contracts aren't paper, they're patterns. They live in your choices, in your nervous system, in the echo of your thoughts. To rewrite them, you must do 3 things that terrify most people. 1. Own what you signed. Stop playing victim. Stop saying, "Why is life doing this to me?" Life isn't doing it to you. Life is honoring the vow your soul made for your highest expansion. That shift alone flips you from powerless to powerful. 2. Negotiate from sovereignty, not desperation. You don't beg the universe for shortcuts. You demonstrate readiness through alignment. That means making decisions today that match the level you claim to desire. You say you want freedom, stop clinging to cages. You say you want truth, stop selling yourself for crumbs of approval. Every aligned choice sends a signal. Upgrade the contract. 3. Ritualize your rewrite. Speak it. Write it. Anchor it in action. Say, "I release the clause that binds me to lack. I keep the wisdom, not the wound. I accept power without punishment." And then live it. Because cosmic law bends to embodied truth, not empty words. Do you feel how different this is from the fluffy spiritual advice out there? This isn't about love and light bypassing. This is raw shadow alchemy. Because if you don't claim authorship of your contracts, the old clauses will keep looping like a cursed playlist. And you weren't born to loop. You were born to leap. But listen carefully. The moment you rewrite, life will test you harder than ever. Why? To see if the new agreement holds under pressure. You'll feel like the storm intensified, but it's not chaos, it's confirmation. Stand your ground, and reality will snap like a broken chain. Collapse, and the old code reloads. In the final part, I'm going to take you into the last secret. What happens after the rewrite? The rewards no one talks about. The level beyond awakening where chosen ones stop surviving and start architecting reality itself. And the twist? It's nothing like you imagine. Are you ready to hear what's waiting on the other side of the contracts you thought were curses? The aftermath of the rewrite, and how to step into power without losing your soul. So you've rewritten the contracts. You've burned through isolation, survived the fire, endured the silence, you've faced the clauses that once controlled you, and you've reclaimed your pen. But here's the truth no one tells you. The moment the ink dries on your new agreement, the entire architecture of your life begins to rearrange, and it doesn't tiptoe, it erupts. People vanish overnight. Doors slam shut in ways that make no logical sense. Paths you've walked for years crumble under your feet. At first you'll think, did I mess up? No. This is the first law of spiritual physics. The old reality cannot coexist with the new contract. Everything built on your wounds has to collapse so your power has room to breathe. And then something even stranger happens. The void returns, but this time it's not heavy, it's spacious. For the first time, emptiness feels like freedom instead of fear. You wake up and realize the noise is gone, not just outside, but inside. No more bargaining with your worth. No more mental tug-of-war over who you should be. The inner static that haunted you for years, silence. And in that silence, something whispers. Not fear, not doubt, but clarity. Pure, ruthless clarity. You know what you want. You know what you will no longer tolerate. You don't just know it, you embody it. This is the moment most people never reach because they quit halfway. They ran back to the comfort of cages when the fire burned too hot. They begged for validation when silence got too loud. But you didn't run, you burned. You broke, you rewrote, and now you're standing where few ever stand, at the threshold of sovereignty. This is where your life becomes unrecognizable, not because magic sprinkles fall from the sky, but because you finally stopped leaking power. You don't chase anymore. You don't beg anymore. You don't contort yourself to fit rooms you've outgrown. You've become the room. You've become the frequency. And everything in your reality now bows to that vibration. But before you crown yourself too fast, here's the warning that could save your soul. Power is seductive. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It tells you, you've earned this, use it to bend the world to your will. And here's where the final trap hides. The ego reborn in spiritual armor. The old self disguised as divinity. If you slip here, you'll build a golden cage and call it a throne. You'll think you're free while shackled to control, drowning in the illusion that domination equals destiny. And if you fall into that, the universe will rip it all apart again, because the vow you made before time began was not to rule others, but to rule yourself. So how do you step into power without losing your soul? By remembering this. The contracts were never punishments, they were preparation. Isolation wasn't there to make you bitter, it was to teach you sovereignty. Fire didn't come to destroy you, it came to burn your illusions. Silence didn't erase you, it carved you into a being that doesn't need applause to roar. If you forget that, if you let power become poison, you'll collapse back into the cycle. But if you hold that truth like a blade, you become something rare, a sovereign creator in a world of slaves to validation. And here's what life looks like when you cross that line. Opportunities appear that logic can't explain. People of substance, not parasites, gravitate to you. You walk into rooms and energy shifts because presence no longer leaks from you, it radiates. You no longer pray out of desperation, you command from alignment. You become magnetic not because of tricks, but because you're anchored in truth so deeply that even storms can't move you. The throne you thought was at the top of a mountain? It was inside you all along. Now, let me ask you the question that will echo in your soul long after this ends. Will you live as the author or keep playing the character? Will you wield the pen or let the old clauses write your next chapter? Because here's the brutal mercy of it all. The contracts don't control you anymore, you do. And that's scarier than any darkness you've faced, because it means there are no excuses left. The gate is open, the fire is yours, the silence has spoken. What will you build now that nothing binds you? Because this is the aftermath of awakening. Not light versus dark, not winning versus losing, but creation. Pure, limitless creation. The universe is not asking for your obedience anymore. It's waiting for your design. Will you give it one? Or will you shrink back into the comfort of cages and call it safety? That is the only question that matters now. Remember this. You signed 3 shadow contracts before you awakened. You lived them, you survived them, and now you've rewritten them. The stage is yours, the ink is wet, the page is blank. Write something so fierce that even eternity stops to read it. And that, chosen one, is why you were called.